Almost got it. There we go. A good Erev Shabbos. How's everybody doing? Shabbos is almost here. We've got some challenging but rewarding learning that we're going to be doing. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Come on, glitch book. Here we go. Yehudit in South Carolina, wishing everyone a restful and rejuvenating Shabbos, and so may you have one, Yehudit. Nancy, still at work, grateful for the replay. Bill says 2 bits, because I called the title of today's show, Shave and a Haircut. So we've heard that, shave and a haircut, 2 bits, right? Which is shave and a haircut, 2 bits. How much is 2 bits? Who knows how much is 2 bits? Unexpected answer. You would think that 2 bits, 2 pennies, 2 nickels, 2 dimes. No. 2 bits is equal to a quarter. 2 bits is 25 cents. Who would have guessed? Because a bit is an eighth of a dollar. Crazy stuff from yesteryear. Who else is in the house? Gordo checking in from Scotland. Great to have you. Leona says good afternoon. Shandora in the Bronx. Renee wishing everyone a good Shabbos from Soggy, Indiana. Leona checking in from Illinois. Stephen in New Hampshire. Susan from Russellville, Arkansas, but returning from Oklahoma City for a visit and saying hello. Welcome, Susan. And Marjorie over there on the YouTube side checking in from Georgia. Welcome, everybody. Today's daf is Samech, page 60 here in Tractate Nazir, the 17th volume of the Talmud. And with that, we'll be concluding not only our discussion of Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 8, but chapter 8 itself. Is there another Mishnah before we finish? No. Mishnah number 3, concluding the discussion, the gemara of that, and with that we'll close chapter 8. Just a quick word about something I said yesterday. We were discussing this prohibition in the Torah of men and women wearing each other's clothes, and then and some strong language from the Torah there that it's an abomination, and that the sages interpreted that as what's actually an abomination is not just wearing the clothes, but sort of passing as the other gender in order, to spend time among the other gender in a, presumably lascivious way. And pertinent to that conversation, to that discussion that we had yesterday, we also saw that what constitutes, men's clothing or women's clothing is subject to some change in terms of, what is fashionable in that place, right? And we were talking about that a kilt in Scotland, would not have the same meaning outside of Scotland. In Scotland, men wear those and it's not considered feminine at all. Men wear kilts. But that outside of Scotland, that would be a skirt and it would have a different meaning. So as part of that discussion, I mentioned that, these days it's quite common for women to wear pants kind of in society. And there are definitely women's trousers, that fit in a woman's way and, just don't look like the clothing of men at all. And so I mentioned that it wouldn't be a violation of that prohibition from Deuteronomy that that women cannot wear men's clothing and vice versa. So a woman wearing pants wouldn't violate, although some disagree with that, the idea of wearing men's clothing. However, that's not to say that an Orthodox Jewish woman will wear pants, right? Because there's a different issue involved, not whether she's wearing men's clothing, but tznius, modesty issues. And so for the most part, you just won't see Orthodox women wearing pants. Sometimes they'll wear pants for warmth with a skirt over it. But this is considered, sort of custom of the community, minhag of the community. And this, the requirement of modesty definitely has a lot of implications for fashion, for clothing. There's actually a Vogue story about how Orthodox women's fashion is becoming high fashion. But at any rate, the idea of women wearing pants is more complex than just is she wearing men's clothing or not. So if you have a question about that, definitely talk to a rabbi, and there's a lot of pages on the internet about halacha and women wearing pants. It's kind of outside of our discussion, but I just thought I would mention that since it came up yesterday. Okay, so we picked this up right at the top of 60a, and we're discussing this very complex Mishnah, Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 8, which we've encountered before, and sort of just as part of a discussion on a different law. But here is this case of dual uncertainty about a Nazir, right? So one takes a vow of nazirus that during the days of the vow, the term of the vow, if he's vowed unspecified time length, it's going to be 30 days. If he vowed for longer than that, then he's obligated, or she is obligated for the term of the vow, not to eat grapes or wine or any produce of the grapevine, not to cut hair, not to become tamei for the dead, not to become impure for the dead, going into a cemetery, helping embalm a body, etc., and to bring the offerings incumbent on a Nazir at the conclusion of Nazirs. If the Nazir becomes impure for the dead during his term of Nazirus, somebody drops dead next to him, he tries to lend first aid, is unable to resuscitate the person, now he's touched a corpse. Okay, so he has to bring the offerings of impurity, go through the purification for touching a corpse, and then he loses all the days that he counted as a Nazir prior to that event, and he's going to have to restart the Nazirus. He's going to shave for the so that he's growing like a new head of hair, as it were, and then he's going to have to redo his whole Nazirus. Meanwhile, there's a person who becomes a Metzora, right? So we don't have that anymore, but in the days that the temple was standing, if you developed this skin condition and an expert priest came and said, that is tzaraas, so then this person becomes a Metzora, and he's going to have to go through a purification for that, which involves shaving the whole body twice. A Nazir is not allowed to cut hair, is not allowed to remove their hair, unless he becomes a Metzora or he's shaving for impurity from the dead. So now, what if one person takes the vow of Nazirus and then he is unsure whether he became tamei for the dead and unsure whether he became a Metzora? Dual uncertainty. This is going to create huge problems for this person. Bottom line, if he vowed a standard term of Nazirus 30 days, and then he became a both uncertain Metzora and uncertain tamei for the dead, he's going to end up having to observe quadruple length of the term of Nazirus. He's going to end up having to do 120 days of Nazirus instead of 30, and we'll discuss why. If he had taken a vow to be a Nazir for a year, he's going to end up having a 4-year term of Nazirus. Strong incentive not to undertake a vow of Nazirus. Now we're going to explain why he ends up serving a quadruple term if he has this dual uncertainty. The Mishnah stated that, the quadruple term, and now the Gemara is going to explain why. So the sage taught, in what case is this statement of the Mishnah said? With regard to a short Nazirus of 30 days, that it will end up being 120 days. However, with regard to a Nazirus of a year, he partakes of sacrificial food only after 2 years, meaning he would have resolved his impurity from being a Metzora after 2 years, and then he'll need another 2 years to resolve all the uncertainty and complete his Nazirus. Right, so he partakes of sacrificial food, having resolved his tzaraas after 2 years, and he cannot shave. Why? He cannot shave until a year has passed in case he is not a Metzora, right? He's uncertain Metzora. So a Metzora can shave his whole body if he's definitely a Metzora. If he's an uncertain Metzora and a Nazir, he can't do the purification of the Metzora and shave his body because he might not be a mitzora. And so the shaving for an uncertain mitzora does not come and override the prohibition of a Nazir to remove hair. So he has to wait until the whole term ends just in case he's not actually a mitzora. He cannot shave until a year has passed in case he is not a mitzora. He may shave the second time because there are 2 shavings involved in purification from tzaraas. And he may shave the second time only 1 year later than that, in case he was impure during the first year, and this second year was his nazirus observed in purity. At this stage, he may partake of sacrificial meat because he's no longer mitzora, for if he was a full-fledged mitzora, he has shaved twice and completed the purification from being a mitzora. Yet, if the first 2 shavings were for his tzaraas, so he has not shaved for his nazirus at all. And therefore, he might, right, he didn't, because he's an uncertain tamei from corpse tuma. Right? So yet the first 2 shavings were just for his tzaraas, so he has not shaved for his nazirus at all, and therefore he must observe a 3rd year of nazirus and then shave. And then he must observe another year of nazirus and shave again, as perhaps his 3rd shaving was for his impurity from the corpse tuma, and the 4th will be for his nazirus in purity. And consequently, he may drink wine and become impure for the dead, meaning his nazirus has ended, only after 4 years, quadruple the original term. And it is taught with regard to the law of the Mishna in the Tosefta at 6.1, as he shaves with 4 separate acts of shaving, each time for its own reason. He's got to shave 4 times. Why? For the first shaving, after the 30 days of an unspecified nazirus, so it's a 30-day nazirus, or at the end of the period that he vowed to observe nazirus, he brings 2 birds of a mitzora. One is slaughtered over spring water, and the other is sent away. That's just part of the purification that any mitzora undergoes. And he also brings a bird sin offering for his shaving of impure nazirus, that he might have become impure from a corpse as a nazir. And an animal burnt offering for his shaving of purity, as he may not have been tamei from a corpse, and he needs a shaving at the end of his nazirus. So for his second shaving, he brings a bird sin offering and an animal burnt offering. For his 3rd shaving, he again brings a bird sin offering and an animal burnt offering. And for the 4th shaving, he brings an offering of purity, right? He's shaving twice as a mitzora, once because he might have been impure for the dead and he has to shave for that, and then the final shaving that a Nazir does when he completes his nazirus. Those are the 4 shavings that this person with dual uncertainty of both uncertain mitzora and uncertain tamei for the dead ends up shaving 4 times. So the Gemara analyzes the details and reasons for this law. You said in this baraisa that for the first shaving, he brings the 2 birds of a mitzora, as well as a bird sin offering and an animal burnt offering. And the Gemara explains why you do this. In this manner, he brings the proper offerings, whichever way you look at it. As if his status as a mitzora is definite and he is not tamei for the dead, then the birds that he brings are for his obligation to purify himself from tzaraas. And as the bird sin offering, in case he was impure, was brought due to uncertainty, it goes for burial, like all bird sin offerings that are sacrificed in a case of uncertainty, which cannot be eaten. And the bird burnt offering that he brought, in case he was an impure nazir, impure for the dead, this is considered a gift offering. And the Gemara further explains, but it is not possible to shave him right after 7 days, as one usually does when purified from tzaraas, as perhaps he is not a mitzora, right? He's an uncertain mitzora. So if in reality he's not a mitzora, so that's why he cannot shave while he's a nazir. So he has to wait until that full nazirus term ends. And he has, so if he, in case he is not a real mitzora, he has no obligation to shave, but he is bound by his nazirus vow. And the merciful one says, no razor shall come upon his head until the days are fulfilled, which he consecrated himself to the Lord as a Nazir. So this verse teaches that he cannot shave until the end of his nazirus. Therefore, he shaves only after 30 days. The two shavings of a mitzorah that are part of his purification, which are normally 7 days apart, because this guy is a nazir and an uncertain, impure nazir, he's going to have to separate those not by 7 days, but by the full length of his nazirus term. Either 30 days if it's a short nazirus, or whatever he vowed to do if it's longer than that. And the Gemara continues to clarify the various uncertainties concerning the first shaving. And if he is not a definite mitzorah, but he is impure from corpse tuma, so then the bird sin offering is for his obligation as an impure nazir, and there's no problem with the unnecessary rituals of a mitzorah's birds, as they are performed outside the temple and are not subject to the prohibition against bringing non-sacred animals into the temple courtyard. Therefore, the slaughter of one of the birds outside the temple is not a transgression, and the animal burnt offering is considered a gift offering. And if he is neither a mitzorah nor impure from the dead, right? He's uncertain. We're covering all the possibilities. He might be a mitzorah, he might not. He might be impure from the dead, he might not. So what's happening with these offerings in the situation, given what is the underlying reality, right? That's why we're covering all the bases here. So if in reality he is neither a mitzorah nor impure for the dead, he has still nevertheless acted correctly. Why? Because the birds, they are brought outside the temple, which means no transgression is committed with him walking into the temple while impure. While the bird sin offering of uncertain necessity, that goes to burial. That's what's done with a bird of for uncertain, the bird sin offering that is brought for uncertain cases. And the animal burnt offering, this is for his obligation like any Nazir who completes his Nazirus. So the Gemara asks, but isn't a Mitzorah required to bring a guilt offering to complete his atonement and permit him to partake of sacrificial food, right? Meaning, why is he partaking of sacrificial food? Meaning, in case he's a priest and he's allowed to eat sacrificial food, or he's a regular Jew who's going to eat from a peace offering, but you can't eat from the peace offering, nor can a priest eat from a sin offering if they are tamei. And a mitzorah is tamei until he completes his purification. But isn't a mitzorah required to bring a guilt offering to complete his atonement and permit him to finally partake of sacrificial foods? And the Gemara answers, this ruling is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who said that one may bring a guilt offering and stipulate like this: if I am obligated to bring this offering, then it is for my obligation. And if I am not obligated to bring it, then this offering shall be a voluntary peace offering. Now, for the second and third shavings, he does not need to bring birds again, as he has already performed this ritual. So what is the potential concern? That perhaps he was previously a confirmed mitzorah of definite status, right? Confirmed mitzorah means that a priest came and said, that's tzaraas. Uncertainty could exist because a priest came and said that's tzaraas, but he wasn't sure if the priest was talking to him. So the priest confirmed that someone has tzaraas, but maybe there were two people there, and he's not sure whether the priest confirmed it for him or for some other guy. That's why you can say a confirmed tzaraas, confirmed by a priest, but uncertain whether it was him. And that's what the uncertainty is here, whether he's a confirmed mitzorah or not. As opposed to someone who has a skin condition and he might be a mitzorah, but it hasn't been confirmed by a priest yet. That's a different kind of uncertainty that we're not talking about here. Now, for the second and third shavings, he does not need to bring birds again because he has already performed this ritual. What is the potential concern? That perhaps he was previously a confirmed mitzorah of definite status, and for this reason, one of the bird sin offerings he brings at the second shaving is for the days of his counting. That's part of the purification of the mitzorah, when his status was uncertain. After the first purification of a confirmed mitzorah, he counts 7 days, or 30 days in this case, due to the uncertainty, and then he brings a sin offering. And the one sin offering he brings at his third shaving is for his uncertain impurity, tamei from a corpse. If he was a mitzora, the offerings he brought on the previous occasion were for his purification from tzaraas, not his nazirus. This means that if he was impure, he is still required to bring a sin offering for his impurity as a nazir. Furthermore, the animal burnt offerings he brings for his second and third shavings are for his nazirus of purity. And for his fourth shaving, he brings an offering of purity, and he stipulates as follows. Now we're on 60b. And if he was a definite nazir from the start and was neither impure from a corpse nor a mitzora, so the first burnt offering he brought after his initial shaving was for his obligation of pure nazirus, and this one that he is bringing now is a gift offering. And if he was impure from a corpse and a confirmed mitzora, the first burnt offering he brought was a gift offering, and this one he is bringing now is for his obligation. And these, the guilt offering and the peace offering he is currently bringing, are for the rest of his obligatory offerings. And this concludes the Gemara's analysis of the case of the Baraisa. You don't have to track exactly what offerings are being brought for everything. It's hard to follow. But what you're seeing is that they're covering all the bases because of the various combinations of uncertainty. Now, the Gemara addresses similar situations. A Nazir about whom it was uncertain, if he was impure from a corpse, and he was a confirmed mitzora whose status was definite, so he partakes of sacrificial food after 8 days. Why? He counts 7 days after which he's purified from his tzaraas. On the following day, he brings his offerings, and so he's not in a state of impurity. He's still a Nazir, but he is not tamei from anything. He has resolved his tuma from the tzaraas. On the following day, he brings his offerings, and he may partake of sacrificial food. And he may drink wine and become impure from the dead after 67 days. Right? It was a 30-day term of nazirus. It's going to take 67 days before he can actually drink wine again. And he's required to count what? Another 30 days for his nazirus and shave. It was only a 30-day term of nazirus, but because he shaved his body as part of the purification for the tzaraas, he has to stay a nazir for an extra 30 days in order to grow enough hair that he can do the final shaving of a nazir upon his conclusion, the conclusion of his nazirus. Now the Gemara brings a different case. A Nazir whose status as a confirmed mitzora was uncertain and who was definitely impure from a corpse, he ends up partaking of sacrificial food after 37 days. He shaves after 7 days for his definite impurity, and he starts counting his days of nazirus again. At the conclusion of this period, he shaves again, which renders him pure from his uncertain tzaraas, and then he may partake of sacrificial food. However, he may drink wine and become impure from the dead only after 74 days. Since he might have been a confirmed mitzora, his first two shavings after 7 and 37 days count only toward the 2 stages of his purification from tzaraas for his first shaving and after the days of his counting. He must therefore observe a further 30 days for his nazirus of purity. Different case. The Gemara mentions yet another case. A Nazir who was definitely impure from a corpse and was a confirmed mitzora, whose status was definite, partakes of sacrificial food after 8 days. He immediately shaves. So this is like the normal case where there's no uncertainty. He is a Nazir, he's not impure from the dead, and he becomes a mitzora. So then what happens? Oh, no, I'm sorry, definitely impure and a confirmed. So he is both. For sure, he becomes impure for the dead and he becomes a mitzora, but he knows that. There's no uncertainty. What happens with him? He immediately shaves his first shaving for his tzaraas. Then he counts 7 days and shaves again for his tzaraas. And now he's finished. He's pure from his tzaraas. That took 7 days. And so he partakes of sacrificial foods on the 8th day. And he may drink wine and become impure from the dead after 44 days. He counts a further 7 days of hair growth for his shaving of impurity, shaves, and finally observes 30 more days of his nazirus of purity. New subject. The students of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai ask Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, with regard to one who is a pure Nazir and a Mitzora, what is the law concerning the possibility that he may shave one shaving and it will count for him both for this and for that? Right? So here's kind of the modern younger students saying, Come on, can't we, ease the burden on this guy? Why does he have to shave 4 different times? Can't we say that since he's already shaving, that shaving is going to count for both his shaving of the Mitzorah and the shaving of the impure Nazir? Can't we do that? He said to them, he may not shave once for both requirements. And they said, why not? And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said to them, if the aim of both shavings were the same, this one to grow hair and that one to grow hair, or this one to remove hair and that one to remove hair, you would have spoken well. But now in actual fact, the 2 shavings have different functions. A Nazir shaves to remove his hair, and a Mitzorah shaves to grow his hair so that he can shave again after the days of his counting. So his students posed another question. But even if his shaving of nazirus does not count for him as the shaving of the completion of his days of confirmed tzaraas, we'll let it at least count for him as the shaving at the end of his days of counting, the second shaving of the Mitzorah, which is not followed by another act of shaving, and therefore it is performed only for the purpose of removing hair. Right? Sometimes you shave to grow hair. What does that mean? It means that you shave now so that you will have the right amount of hair growth for the later shaving that you're obligated to do. But when you're talking about the second shaving, that's just the mitzvah to remove hair. So can't one shaving count for both the second shaving of the Mitzorah and the final shaving of the Nazir? And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said to them, well, if this one were performed before the sprinkling of the blood, and that one were performed before the sprinkling of the blood, of the offerings, then you would have spoken well. However, in Mitzorah, he does his second shaving before the sprinkling of the blood of his offerings on the altar in the temple, when the temple is standing. And a Nazir only does his shaving after the blood of his offerings is sprinkled on the altar in the temple, in the holy temple. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's students tried another way. And granted that his shaving does not count for his days of tzaraas and his nazirus, but let it at least count for his days of tzaraas and his shaving of impurity, right? The shaving when a nazir becomes impure for the dead, both of which are performed before the sprinkling of the blood of those offerings. And he said to them, if this one shaved before his immersion in water and that one shaved before immersion in water, you would have spoken well. However, an impure Nazir shaves only after he has immersed in the mikvah on the 7th day of his purification from corpse tuma, whereas a Mitzorah shaves before he immerses in water. In other words, although a Nazir undergoes shaving and brings offerings as part of his purification, and so does a Mitzorah, the various procedures of the Mitzorah and the procedures of the Nazir are incompatible with each other. And that's why you can't say that one shaving is going to count for both, because he's got to do the 2 shavings of the Mitzorah and the 2 shavings of a Nazir. This is a further evidence why you should not undertake a vow of Nazirus. They said to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, you have spoken well and convinced us that one shaving should not count for the days of his counting of a Mitzorah, and for his Nazirus. But why not say that it should at least count for his days of confirmed tzaraas and his Nazirus of impurity, as the purpose of this shaving is to grow hair and the purpose of that one is to grow hair, because there's going to be another shaving later in both cases. And he said to them, here too, the acts of shaving for Nazirus and for tzaraas are not exactly the same. If he is a pure Nazir, and he is also a Mitzorah, the difference is that the aim of this one, the shaving of the Mitzorah, is to grow hair so that he can shave again on the second shaving. And the aim of that one, the shaving of the pure Nazir, is to remove his hair. A pure Nazir is at the shaving at the conclusion of his Nazirus. And if he is an impure Nazir, impure for the dead, and he is also a Mitzorah, the difference is that this shaving of the Mitzorah occurs before immersion in water, and that one, the shaving of an impure Nazir, is performed after he immerses in water. Now we're in 61a, which we're just going to go into a little bit so we can finish chapter 8. And Rabbi Achia, teaches the same law. The shaving of Mitzorah does not count for the shaving of Nazirus, as this one, the Mitzorah, shaves before he immerses in water, and that one, an impure Nazir, shaves after he immerses in water. This one, the Mitzorah, shaves before the blood is sprinkled, and that one, the pure Nazir, shaves after the blood is sprinkled. And the Mishnah taught that the shaving of tzaraas overrides the shaving of a Nazir, the prohibition of shaving of a Nazir, only when he is a confirmed Mitzorah, but an uncertain Mitzorah cannot do the shaving of purification if he is also a Nazir, right? We covered that. So Rami Bar Chama raises a dilemma. Those 4 shavings about which the Tana of our Mishnah spoke, the 4 that a Nazir performs for his tzaraas and for his impurity from the dead, they are all due to the mitzvah, the commandment of shaving. Or are some of them not performed for the sake of the mitzvah of shaving, but rather just for the sake of removing hair that grew while he was impure, so that hair of purity can grow? So the Gemara asks, what is the difference, whether he shaves for one reason or another? And the Gemara explains it is relevant with regard to removing hair, not by shaving. For example, with a depilatory ointment. If you say that the reason is due to the mitzvah of shaving, then removing with a depilatory lotion is not an option, as the mitzvah is specifically to shave that hair. But if you say the reason is due to the removal of hair of impurity, so then even if he rubs it with a depilatory, that should also be effective. What then is the law? And Rav said, come in here a resolution from a Baraisa in Tosefta 6.1, and he shaves with 4 acts of shaving. And now if it should enter your mind that the reason is for the sake of removing the hair of impurity so that he can grow hair that was grown in purity, then even 3 shavings should be enough for him, 2 for his tzaraas and the last one for his nazirus of purity. Since the 3rd shaving is performed only to remove his hair that was grown while he was impure, so that he can start growing hair during impurity of nazirus afresh. So why is it included? Conclude from the Baraisa that all 4 shavings are due to the mitzvah of shaving. And the Gemara says, conclude from the Baraisa that this is the case. So those 4 instances where he shaves, he has to shave with a razor. That concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 3 in chapter 8, and that concludes chapter 8. Let's see if we've got any questions or comments as we leave behind, God willing, the cases of uncertainty. Yes, in fact, just a preview of chapter 9, Mishnah number 1. We're leaving these cases of uncertainty and all that complexity, and we're going to have quite an interesting issue. Gentiles do not have nazirus, right? So nazirus is something that Jews do. It's specified for them in the Torah. A Gentile does not have a vow of nazirus available to them. Nazir 60. Questions and comments. Renee, what do the androgynos or other genders considered by the sages would they be permitted to wear? What would they be permitted to wear without running afoul of these prohibitions? Fascinating question. Wow, great question, Renee. I don't know. Right? So that's a really interesting question. I'm sure it's dealt with somewhere else. The Torah is just very specific that a man can't wear the clothing of a woman, and a woman can't wear the clothing of a man, etc. Right? We've been talking about that. Well, what if it's unclear whether this is a man or a woman? Right? In the Talmud, we find the androgynos, which is a person. It's very rare, right? They're not talking about gender dysphoria and what a person feels like. What they're talking about is physical characteristics. The androgynos or hermaphrodite has both sexual organs of a male and a female. So what is this person, male or female, and what should they wear, and what should they do, and how are they going to live, right? Usually, I believe that even when, as I recall, in doing that discussion elsewhere in the Talmud, that while one might have the sexual organs, both, probably neither totally developed, but it is clearly that both the sexual organs of a man and of a woman, I think nevertheless that person will tend to look like one sex or the other, and then I think would be just encouraged to be that. And then there's also the case of the tumtum, where the sexual organs are hidden, so you don't know. It might be male, might be female, but they can't tell yet because it's kind of a flap of skin. So I don't know what the answer to that question is, but it's a fascinating question. And Aoife asks, what about wives wearing their husband's shirts as a quick, comfortable tunic? They're certainly not trying to look like men, or when a man lends a woman his coat to keep her warm. Great question, right? I think in that situation, first of all of these laws will have the nuance that in a time of danger or to protect health, there's going to be exceptions made. So certainly somebody who's cold, and shivering and just needs a coat, no problem. And then a coat, even though you might say, there's men's coats and women's coats, when we're talking about like ski jackets, like, for the most part, like, especially these days, like with like kind of the big baggy parkas, what's the difference, So, are they trying to, pass as the other gender, that kind of wearing clothing? This situation that you're naming, probably not, but I'm not sure. You'd have to kind of look that up. I saw, as I was doing some quick research on this, the question, can women wear pajama pants in the privacy of their own home? And there's some, discussion about that, and that's not a simple answer, for Orthodox women. I'm definitely out of my element here. So far, I have no expertise whatsoever on these questions. So, and a lot of these questions are very much practical questions that people really need need answers for, not a hypothetical discussion. So talk to your rabbi, or at the very least, Google the specific question. Now, when you Google halachic questions, you have to be very careful about, where are you getting the answer from, right? There's a lot of websites that offer halakhic information, but that might not be, the same, they might not hold in the same way that your particular community holds. So it's always best to have a rabbi to ask these questions of, and to ask the rabbi. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Saturday night, to open chapter 9. And may we all be blessed, as Yehudit always says, with a restful and rejuvenating Shabbos. All the best.